Next up, we'd like to call up Linda Murphy with the Manitoba Geological Survey. She's worked with the Manitoba Geological Survey since 2006, worked in the Kissimmee, and she's going to talk to you about their liaison program.
Does it just come up? Hi, I'm Linda Murphy. I'm part of the liaison. I built a liaison program with the Manitoba Geological Survey, and this year it was about building communication bridges and sharing perspectives. It says here that I'm a liaison geologist for the Manitoba Geological Survey, but I'm also Anishinaabe Kwe from Hollow Water, and it's the only Murphy on the band list. Okay. And that picture up there, I'll come back to it toward the end of the presentation, as building bridges and communication are incredibly important. The bridges help with economy, help with building communities up, but only if you're on them. So you can look at it from the perspective of being here inside the box, or you can look at it like these young men are, standing there thinking about it, but they're not quite up on the bridge. And then make it go. There. What's a liaison program? It's a diverse relationship building process that shares land use information. The MGS and the community work together. There has to be more than one process to it. So the beginning process is, what does a geologist do to map the land? The benefits to attending post-secondary education and the option of partnering in mineral industry. The options of partnering is not just partnering so that they can get into the industry, but maybe contracts. If you had a trucking contract, the mining company would utilize it, but if the mine leaves, you still have the trucks. So you have built capacity and you can move on to another thing for diversity. So we talk about things like that. But the second part of it is we listen and learn from each other. And the next process is determined through the community. So in 2009 and 2010, the MGS and the CSA Dene mapped bedrock together. In eastern Manitoba, the MGS mapped by request. And last year, in northeastern Manitoba, we developed a little program called What on Earth? I'm going to probably murder this horse. Kikan Ota Aski. And that is basically what on earth, right? So it talked to the youth to help them understand better what are jobs, what are careers, and what does it take to get them. And to interest them in land use education. These are posters. That poster there is 2012 for Norway House. And there's another one for Bonabanabe last year. And posters are a big thing. The community and the participants who are with me work through the poster themselves. So basically the posters that you see on T27 and T28 have been built by the communities as well. So we've had partnerships. It's funded through the Manitoba Geological Survey, but the partnerships this year were with the Cree First Nations of Bonabanabe, that's Oxford House, God's Lake at God's Lake Narrows, and Norway House with the affiliates from the University College of the North. And in particular, that is Tony Scribe and Oliver Muskego. You start with the options, it's presentations. And as you can see, they're not always in it at the very beginning. We focus on the basic requirements they need to attain a job. Basically grade 12, right? Careers, a career that is meaningful usually means post-secondary education and developing economic opportunities. But we also go on to the web search, and that particular website helps any community, traditional land use areas, any land use planners, what's going on at the base of their lands. So what is the activity going on? What is the exploration? What is the mining? What's the geology? All of it, that's a base for it. And we could do that there at Healy Lodge at God's Lake Narrows, just on the internet. And it's communication using hand-on science. we'll talk about all and get them to use all the parts that a geologist would use in the field. There's the data record keeping, the gloves, the magnets, how to use a compass. Data collection is extremely important, and safety discussions. Without a good safety program, you can walk into the bush and not come back, and it's pretty expensive for a company to find you. So don't do that, right? And we take it to mineral and rock identification. Basically go outside, pick the rocks, find out what's there, and we talk about it. The earth science is outside. So day trips are part of the whole program. How to sample. Basically, why are we sampling? How do we sample? What is the purpose of it? How much is taken? All of these questions that people wouldn't know if they didn't have a chance to ask. Using a hand lens, by sitting outside on the ground, we can take a look at the minerals that are on their area. And I had one elder in one particular community, he wanted to know, what does layered rock mean? So this layered rock is a gneiss, so it takes us from discussions in simple geology to plate tectonics, and then on, because we've already practiced the use of the compasses, on to measuring rock structure. Everyone is welcome to come out, and having elder participation and community role model participation is fundamental. It allows the discussions to move forward. Elders and their role models. Every community has community role models. You don't even notice them, right? Everybody notices really good leadership when you have chief and councils, or you have really good mayors, or wherever it is, premiers. They're all very important to the system. But the everyday person who walks back and forth to work are extremely important too, and they're just not noticed. So when we think about elders and the awareness of Indigenous peoples and their industrious land use history, it is a very long land use history. I've often wondered, this particular paint that is used probably has lasted thousands of years. How come we don't have the recipe for that? Why do I have to paint my house every 10 years? And to bridge historical perspectives, the historical perspectives of an industrious land use and the changes that have happened in northern Manitoba's economy. And we take a look at Oxford House for an example. This is the same kind of collection of air photos that we would have used to map. And I think that the geologists who worked there this year did use that type. And we did a ride around and took a look at the things that were important to Bonabonabee. And Swallow Cliff came out of it. It's the very end of an esker that's very fine-grained, and it has annual swallow migrations that happen there. And I think that probably early in the history, that was probably an Indigenous food source. But also in land use, we have the political parts where there's the extension to Bonabee Cree Nation. And if you're looking for where these are, take a look at the posters, because I've marked them down on the posters. And Treaty 5 adhesion. That is sacred to the community. It's sacred to them for their treaty and Aboriginal rights. And due to consultation and having open discussions, that was pulled from the mineral regulations. But the fur trade was a huge thing for the economy. The mercantile economy operated based on First Nations and Indigenous people who trapped the furs, who transported the furs, sold them, and transported back and forth goods on the boat system. That's a very long history. And through changes in the industry, they get left behind. So if you went on to another industry and the perspectives of then and now, the industriousness and historical economic shifts, there were commercial fisheries as well. And in many places, this is still prospering. And in some, they didn't. It may have happened through barriers put in place through higher costs, transportation, maybe overfishing, or maybe regulatory barriers. And these buildings on Oxford Lake are in pristine condition. Unfortunately, beavers and ice flows have completely destroyed the dock. But having community role models in each community allows us to discuss with participants what's important, and for them to see the role models that exist right there that they don't notice. And when thinking about overfishing, maybe that might have been one of the reasons they collapsed, and restocking the sturgeon. So here in Norway House, the sturgeon fingerlings have been restocked, and we were invited to attend that by Jamie Leary and Carl Hart. There were 40,000 fingerlings that were put into the river system at that day. Sturgeon were overfished and nearly extinct, and it wasn't even overfished as a source of food. For the most part, they were simply burned as fuel on boats on Lake Winnipeg. But now it's changing. So with the elder and the role model perspectives, we have the historical mineral extraction and exploration practices. This is the CAP mine shaft and the rehabilitation site at Jowsey Island. Jowsey Island and God's Lake Mine ran from the 30s to the 50s with very little interaction with the First Nation communities in its vicinity. The Gold Lake Mine produced over 160 ounces of gold and over 28,000 ounces of silver. So if you think about it from a perspective of the First Nations, and you think about it from the perspective of a person in Winnipeg, in Thompson, in the province of Manitoba, you want to make your money and you want to keep your money. It's what you use for infrastructure. It's what you use to keep your communities healthy. So there was almost no interaction for this happening in their community. The thing is that now practices are different. And if you went to this area, it's all cleaned up through government processes to rehabilitate these areas, and capacity has been added to each community in the vicinity because of contracts. So they've helped economically. They've been benefited economically, capacity-wise, by the programs that occurred during the cleanup. So they've been engaged through that. Acknowledging that history allows a forward movement. Elders and role models in every community would remind their First Nation youth, would remind all of us, would remind the participants that industrious history is a very good foundation for present and future economic development. So we can move forward from that. Walking and working together, it's a two-way communication. If you want to be on a bridge, there has to be people walking back and forth on it. It can't be just one set of people saying something. You have to do exactly what everybody has been saying, listen and learn together. So I can only share the geological perspective because I'm a geologist, but any company can go in and talk about what they do as their perspective and share that, encourage the post-secondary education, and acknowledge the strength in engaging elder knowledge holders and community role models. This allows these communities to reconnect, build their foundations. And when they've built their foundations, they can move forward. I want to acknowledge Keith Baskunas, who is the liaison person for God's Lake, Jamie Leary in Norway House, who's a Directorate of Lands and Environment Natural Resources, and Carl Hart, who helped from Conservation, and Horace Crane from Bonabonabee, Elder Stephen Okamo, and Roy Wienesk. When we learn together, we remember their industrious history and that environmental aerial worldview, the land and the water. It is really important. It doesn't matter if the communities are traditional or not traditional, that land-based view is there. And a growing population who are looking for meaningful employment, careers, and economic opportunities. Every place that I've been, That's what they want. Moving forward together with respectful communication bridge, the links between a good communication strategy, strong economies, healthy communities, healthy provinces, supportive work environments are astonishing. Liaison programs are communication bridges, they're engagement channels. Together we can balance solutions to meet the needs of all Manitobans and for the equal benefit of all Manitobans. It's not just a motto, we really do work better together if we travel on these bridges. So we come back to this particular picture. I'm an Anishinaabe, so everything comes in a circle. And you look down here, you're looking through from the box, and you're not on that bridge. You're not there. You're looking at it and maybe making assumptions. These young men would like to be there, but they're not quite there yet. But they can see the pathway. And really what we have to do is start walking together. It's not as if any one of us are higher or lower. If we work together and walk together, we can have a forward movement. Actually, things like this, they really do talk. People talk better when you're working together in a more friendly atmosphere. And while you're at it, have some fun. I want to thank you in English, in Ojibwe, in Dene, and in Cree. Thank you, Miigwech, Masi, and Ekosi. Do you have any questions?